Hey y'all, Moses here. Just wanted to let you know that the giveaway for the Logitech G533 and the G703 wireless gaming setup is still ongoing. There's only about 2 weeks left. Check the link in the description, and I hope you win. Hey y'all, Moses here. Today I'm talking about the patch that dropped just yesterday. It was a small patch. It included the cosmetics and a couple of other little changes, a supposed buff to the M16, some shotgun changes, etc. I talked about the patch notes yesterday. What I didn't talk about, and what I couldn't talk about, is something that changed in the patch that we were not informed about. So, for the longest time, I have complained about the directional sound in PUBG as it relates to gunshots. The directional sound as it relates to gunshots has been an issue for players since the game launched. There has been countless guides, videos, discussions asking about headsets, hardware setups, sound cards, audio setups, 7.1 versus stereo. All in all, the sound system as it stands, or at least as it stood, was suboptimal as far as locating shots in the world because of just how they were presented and how they were projected into the world. Now, I'm going to be stealing some content from a Reddit user by the name of Goat today, who has explained both the previous sound system and how it worked and the current sound system and how it's changed. So yes, the sound system within PUBG has changed as it relates to gunshots. A few things have come about in evolution of the sound system over the last little while, the last couple of months, at least for footsteps and a couple of other things that we have gotten used to over time. But gunshots have never been localized in a 3D space, something that is now happening in the game. So an undocumented change essentially went into the patch this last evening that now changes the way that gunshots are rendered in the world. They are now fully rendered in 3D. Now, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, and we're going to go over how exactly it's changed first, and I'm going to talk about a couple other things. So, I'm going to borrow a little bit now from this Reddit post. I'll link to this in the description below so you can go and check it out yourself. So, essentially, let's talk about what was affecting the gunshots before. So, again, this is from the Reddit user Goat. Since day one, certain sounds in PUBG have suffered from broken panning behavior, adversely affecting players' ability to localize important in-game sounds, particularly gunshots. This defect has been written about in detail by Goat and this bug report. The gist is that prior to this patch, certain loud sounds had no front, back, and up-down differentiation. They were subject to 90-degree zones of ambiguity directly to the player's left and right, and exhibited erroneous panning behavior related to the height of these sounds relative to the player. So, essentially, the up and down and left to right sounds were sometimes completely wrong, or were hard to discern. So that's kind of a big issue, that left to right, up and down, especially up and down. The height issue was something that has been plaguing me forever, because you can know where a gunshot is coming from, but not the height in which it's coming from. Could mean it could be coming from a bush at the base of a hill or the top of a hill. You just don't know, and you have to check. What this newest patch has done is enable for gunshots the same processing done on footsteps, so that now gunshots are also localized correctly in full 3D. No longer is it necessary to turn and face gunshots to discern their exact direction. Unfortunately, other types of loud sounds like explosions, breaking glass, and vehicle engines still appear to be affected by the above defects. And then he lists a couple different examples. I might pull some of these just to show you what he's referring to, but for now, let's just assume that gunshots are now going to register in a much more obvious way, or at least a more realistic way as they occur around you, which is going to be a tremendous buff to your overall spatial awareness, location of gunshots, etc. However, one thing that he does mention is that this change is going to rattle a lot of people, because this is a drastic change to a critical game system. The sound system is so critical in PUBG that if it's not working correctly or gives inaccurate information, it can be both extremely frustrating and also lead to your round ending very prematurely, depending on what happens, how you interpret information. And mastering that interpretation of information is something that high-level players have been doing for more than a year at this stage. So now that this gunplay system has changed, a lot of people, including myself, were like, what is happening? Because it's just so different. And really, that change is something that we should have been told about, and we weren't. So this is now the second half of the video. To summarize before I get into this part, The sound system has changed, at least for gunshots. Gunshots and footsteps, the two most critical components of the sound engine, are now being localized fully in 3D, and that's going to lead to a little bit more accurate information as to how that is being presented in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Now, why weren't we told about this? This is a huge change. This is a flagship change. This is the 1A patch note change that should have been on that list, and it was not included. We have seen this in the past in some small things, some bigger things, things that have been listed as fixed that should make it into the patch notes that don't. The patch notes were written excluding this change, and the build that included this change was pushed to live without our knowledge. And really, we're not entitled necessarily to know that every little thing that happens in the patch notes gets in. If it's a small change, if it's like a loot balance tweak, I don't think you want to talk about too much about that, because then there's a placebo effect. People will freak out. But when it comes to a sound change, something that is going to be witnessed and observed by everyone instantly, that is something we need to know about. That way, we're not losing our mind trying to change our settings, looking at, is it a bug? Is it intentional? We're trying to figure this stuff out on our own, and it really leads to a lot of frustration. Twitter was aflame today about how the sound has changed. And now, because that it has been determined, at least by this Reddit user, that this was an intentional change, PUBG Corp also responded in that thread saying that they were going to try and get to the bottom of this miscommunication, that it was intentional, I assume. It just kind of shows how many opportunities there are within PUBG Corp for communication. Something that they've been trying to improve, but the interdepartmental communication on stuff getting into the patch notes is just not good enough right now, and it leads to this building frustration. And I want to touch briefly a little bit on skins, since this was a big topic on the subreddit yesterday as well, is that it seems like a lot of the time when this skin stuff is happening, either with new crates or what have you, they're having to explain themselves a little bit, and that happened yesterday as well, where they're saying, you know, FPS is our top priority. We're going to be focusing heavily on improving FPS. Here's a couple of patch notes. Here's a couple of changes, a couple other things we're working on. By the way, there's a new crate. It comes at the end of the announcement. It comes as a footnote to say, hey, by the way, here's some new skins. Anyway, see you later next time with the next FPS upgrade. I completely understand why skins are in the game. I don't mind it. I opened a couple of the new crates myself today. I understand it, but you have to be self-aware to an extent that if you're having to sugarcoat or buff these, or buffer your announcements of skins to make sure that people aren't getting mad, you have to be somewhat aware that things are not in a good place. Obviously, these things take time. Obviously, this is something that they're going to have to work on over the course of the next couple of months, especially leading up to their major tournament, because FPS optimization and performance are all going to be extremely important when there's a $2 million tournament ongoing. Now, I'm a huge supporter of PUBG esports. I'm a huge supporter of PUBG in general, but this type of stuff needs to stop. I don't know how they can make it so their communication is clearer between departments, how they're making sure that critical updates are included in the patch notes. I think that when it comes to the turnaround time of the test server to live, this is another example of how something could slip under the radar if only 24 hours goes by. Maybe that email gets sent that the sound change gets included in the patch notes, because there's, I believe it's Wriggles, or one of the North American communication leads, is writing these patch notes, but they need to get the right information from the dev team in Korea or Amsterdam, wherever they are. All of this stuff needs to come together. There needs to be more communication, because you're frustrating your player base. And really, it's a tenuous relationship already, as it always is with developers. We've seen this in the past. But really, out of respect to the player base, out of respect to the devs, overall, I mean, this sound change would be a huge positive. Imagine the PR if you include that sound change saying, like, we've listened to your concerns about localized gunshots. Here's this great change we've made. It's a good change. It's going to take a lot of getting used to. But now that I know it's supposed to be a change, at least I can now swallow that and not assume it's a bug or that the sound system is broken, but it's actually being improved. Take credit for the good work you're doing, PUBG Corp. You deserve it. Whew. All right. Well, that's it. I just wanted to talk about that and inform you guys as to what's happening. If you feel the sound is different, that's why. I've linked to the post down below. Don't forget to enter the giveaway I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, I'll see you out there.